Just on the video. Only that. You're recording. You're recording. Try to get okay. Okay. So next, we are going to have Professor Yang going to talk about integrating diverse evidence sources in clinical research, bridging RPCs and RWCs, and Professor Yang from NC State got a lot of achievement. I only mentioned one because it's emerging leadership. Let's welcome Professor Yang.
Good morning, everyone. Thanks to the organizers for having me. Sorry that I cannot join you in person today. Recently, I was newborn into my family, so you can imagine traveling is a bit difficult at this moment. But it is a great pleasure to join you on Zoom. And actually, a few years ago, I had a chance to visit Banff, and the photo on the title page is one photo that I took during that trip. So if you have a chance, please visit this lake. It's beautiful. And then you'll notice that the picture looks a bit cloudy, but there's also a ray of sunshine breaking through. So I think this captures our current moment perfectly. So we're in an exciting but uncertain time, standing at the intersection of statistics and AI, and there are clouds, right? Questions of rigor and trust, but also sunlight, tremendous opportunities to bring these fields together and advance the clinical research. And today I'm going to share some thoughts on how bridging RCT and the real-world data, real-world evidence, and Hong Tu also mentioned that, at this interface of statistics, AI, and RWE can help us navigate this landscape. And our research is supported by the FDA UON grant and the usual disclaimer. And here is the roadmap for today's discussion. So I will start with an overview of real data and the real evidence in clinical and regulatory studies. Then I will highlight how statistics and AI ML intersect in this space. And the central theme is how we can combine conventional wisdom with new technologies, especially for data integration and maintaining statistical rigor. And finally, I will conclude with some summary and future directions. So our research is motivated by the 21st Century Cures Act, passed in 2016. It emphasizes two things. One is big real-world data. The other one is precision medicine. It is designed to help accelerate medical product development and bring new innovations to patients faster. In response, the US FDA has developed a framework called the RWE framework for evaluating the potential use of real data and real evidence for drug and device approval to expedite the drug discovery. And according to US FDA, any data relating to patient health status and or the delivery of care are called real data. And then they can come from a variety of sources, for example, disease registries, natural history studies, EHR, as I mentioned, claims, so on and so forth. And any clinical evidence that derived from analysis of real data is called real evidence. And you can also see this picture from Hong Tu's presentation. This is called the Pilot of Evidence Medicine. This is because different studies have different designs and they can produce a different strength of evidence for medicine. And we know that RCT are generally regarded as a gold standard to produce the highest level of research evidence. And therefore, those studies are placed on the top of the pyramid. On the other hand, the real data, because they are not collected for research purposes and may be subject to biases, and they reside at the bottom of the pyramid. I see this picture already shown by Hong Tu, but this slide shows the growing range of clinical research designs from traditional RCTs to fully observational studies. And throughout this spectrum, we see an increasing common use of RWD to support or even replace part of the clinical trials. So for instance, in conventional RCTs, RWD helps to evaluate the trial feasibility and enrollment by examining claims or EHR data to identify eligible participants. Then there are various study designs that combine RWD, such as programmatic trials, externally controlled trials, hybrid designs, and the target trial emulations from observational studies. And the overarching message is very clear. So we are moving away from a world where RCT alone were the cornerstone of evidence, right, to a continuum of the study designs and that incorporate RWD at varying levels. And here, this slide shows concrete examples where the FDA has already approved the drugs and the biologics with real-world evidence included in the submission. So it really demonstrates that RWE is not just theoretical. It is already influencing regulatory approvals. So on the left panel, you can see between January 2019 and June 2021, 116 approvals included RWE. And the bar chart on the right-hand side shows the trend over time in 2022 through 2024. And the key message is FDA has already approved numerous therapies where RWE was a part of the submission package. And this signals regulatory readiness. So the agency is really open to using real-world data and real-world evidence for drug and device approval. So the agency believes that these data sources can and should be included if design and analysis is done appropriately. And there are many global regulatory initiatives as well. So on the left-hand side, you can see guidance and the considerations for using the real-world data and real-world evidence for drug and device approval produced by US FDA. In the middle, you can see guidance from EMA, that stands for European Medical Agency, and also guidance from China and Japan as well on the right-hand side. So this is a really active area. We also have very active discussions around RWE in our community, including the ASA BioP section. So the ASA BioP section charted the real-world evidence scientific working group in 2018, I believe, to encourage statistical participations and contributions to this active and evolving area. So the working group aims to understand and advance statistical methods in a pre-competitive space and to promote appropriate use of RWE in support of medical product development and regulatory decision making. And this year is phase 4, and the theme focuses on the use of hybrid designs, AI, ML, and negative controls for generating reliable RWE to support regulatory decision making. So we are encountering some challenges from emerging techniques like real-world data and real-world evidence, AI, ML, but we also see a lot of opportunities that they can offer. So then I will highlight how statistics and AI, ML intersect in this space of real-world data and real-world evidence. So let's first understand the RWD and RWE a little bit better by contrasting the complementary features of conventional RCTs and RWD. And we know that RCT are the gold standard, while RWD is emerging evidence source that can extend and complement what trials can tell us, right? So firstly, RCT remains the gold standard because randomization ensures internal validity and minimizes biases. However, they are often limited in representativeness. So for example, only about 8% of cancer patients actually participate in oncology trials. They tend to have smaller sample sizes, shorter follow-up windows, and high cost. On the other hand, the real data capture patients in routine practice, making it more representative of the population who will actually use the treatment. It allows inclusion of diverse patient subgroup, for example, older adult, minorities, and those with comorbidities who are often excluded from the trials. So RWD offers a larger sample sizes, a longer follow-up, and lower cost compared to RCTs. But unlike RCT, RWD lacks randomization. So there's always a risk of unmeasured confounding. And the challenging is to ensure causal inference methods are applied to make a result credible. So rather than competing, RCTs, RWD should be viewed as complementary evidence sources. And the future, I believe, is integration, not replacement. And this slide highlights the complementary strength of conventional statistic and the modern AI/ML approaches. So while statistics has been the foundation of clinical research for decades, AI/ML brings powerful tools, right? Especially as the data become larger and more complex. I think the fundamental difference lies in the goals. Statistics is focused on inference and explanation. AI/ML is focused on prediction and pattern recognition. And in terms of assumptions, statistical models depend on explicit assumptions. These assumptions provide clarity, but can also be restrictive. By contrast, AI/ML models make minimal distributional assumptions, giving them a greater flexibility in handling messy and real-world data. And in terms of data types, statistics works best with structured data, like a clinical trial CRF. These are the case report forms or claims data. AI/ML works well for high-dimensional and unstructured data, including medical images, tests from the clinical notes, and the continuous sensor data as well. And the most important one is the uncertainty quantification. Statistical methods provide formal tools for uncertainty quantification, right? Like the confidence intervals, p-values, hypothesis testing. And the AI/ML is still catching up here. Uncertainty is often approximated through resampling approaches or Bayesian methods. And I think for the scalability and the flexibility, they are obvious. And these features lead to their strength in practice. So statistics has deep regulatory acceptance because of the reproducibility and the theory-driven insight. And the AI/ML offer adaptivity, automation, and also ability to learn in real time. So making it especially relevant for digital health, for example, and continuous monitoring. And the key message here is statistics and they are also not in competition. They are complementary. And the challenging, and of course, the opportunity is how we combine the strength of both. So what is AI? Let's see a clear definition. When we talk about AI in drug development, we mean machine-based system that can make prediction and decision based on human-defined objectives. And within this broad category, machine learning or ML is the most widely applied subset. It refers to algorithms that can improve performance on a task by learning from the data. And defining AI for drug development. So rather than programming every rules, we train the system with the data, and then they can generalize to new cases. So in the drug development context, there could mean predicting patient outcomes, identifying biomarkers, or even optimizing manufacturing processes. So this is the shift from the traditional methods. It's about letting the data teach the system. And importantly, the FDA has acknowledged the increasing use of AI across the product lifecycle. So in fact, the FDA CDER, Center for Drug Evaluation and Research, has seen a sharp rise in submissions that incorporate AI or ML component. And this slide summarizes the evolving methodology landscape in AI, ML, and causal inference as applied to clinical research. And each column here represents a distinct class of methods with different readiness level and the regulatory implications. So let's first talk about the causal inference techniques. Causal inference methods are most mature and widely applied. They allow us to generalize RCT findings using transportability analysis, emulate target trials with RWD, and apply W-robust ML estimators, so on. And these methods are not well accepted in academia, but also gaining regulatory traction, and particularly in external control trials or the RWE submissions. Generative AI for data augmentation and assimilation. Generative AI is particularly valuable in rare diseases or underrepresented populations. because the traditional recruitment is difficult. So it can simulate counterfactual scenarios, augment small RCTs with additional plausible patient profile, and get a synthetic patient data. However, the readiness is still low to moderate, so regulators are still very cautious and require clear validation that synthetic data reflect reality. Agentic AI for adaptive trial planning and behavior modeling. Agentic AI refers to decision-making agents that actively adopt trial operations in real time. So examples include adjusting recruitment strategies to improve diversity, simulating adaptive dosing, and predicting adherence or dropout. But right now, this is just experimental. I think the regulatory acceptance is quite low, and the transparency it actually is and remains a barrier. And the AI-powered placebo digital twins also mentioned by Hong Tu. So here we are talking about digital twins. Those are virtual patient representations created using AI. These models combine mechanic disease understanding with machine learning to predict how a patient would progress on placebo. And the key benefit is that digital twins can act as a synthetic control arm, right? And meaning that we may not need to recruit as many patients into the placebo group. And this is particularly important for serious diseases like Alzheimer's diseases, where patients are reluctant to risk being randomized to a placebo. And the regulatory readiness is still moderate, but there are pilot studies. So the pilot studies are underway. And the challenging, of course, are computation burden, transparency of AI models, and ensuring data from different sources can be harmonized. And Unlearn AI actually is one of the leader in this space, and their platform builds digital twins using disease-specific machine learning models trained on historical clinical data. And in this, every trial participant have a matched digital twin that simulate what would have happened if they had received a control instead of the treatment. And this approach allows for more efficient and ethical trials, especially when placebo-controlled designs are difficult. It can be very attractive because it can speed up decision-making during the trial, potentially shortening a development timeline. And we already seen some real-world applications, for example, some ALS early trials. So ALS is some serious neurodegenerative disease, and also major pharmaceutical companies like AbbVie and Johnson Johnson, they are using this for late-stage Alzheimer's disease, where digital twins help reduce the placebo arm by nearly a third. So this example really shows that the technology is moving from concept to implementation. But we need to be cautious. The FDA has highlighted several concerns when using external or real-world data in this way. So first, the selection bias. Patients in real-world databases may not be comparable to those in the trial. Second, the unmeasured confounding. So key disease variables may be missing or inconsistently captured. And third, the issues with timing. Real-world data may not align well with the trial period. And then finally, outcome definitions may differ, right? So these are not minor details. They can fundamentally affect the validity of the conclusion. So while digital twins, real-world data, real-world evidence are promising, we must rigorously adjust these sources of biases. And the FDA's position is clear. So innovation must not come at the cost of validity. And the enablers are combining. So how we can combine conventional statistical wisdom with the new AI ML technologies, especially for data integration. And we also want to maintain statistical rigor. So you see this table again, rather than competing, RCTs and RWD should be viewed as complementary evidence sources. In the future, I believe is about integration, not replacement. So data integration can achieve the best of both worlds. And here again, traditionally statistics and AI ML are often seen as competing approaches, right? But they are really complementary. So if we combine them, we can get the best of both worlds. So rigorous inference grounded in causal assumptions paired with flexible and data-driven models that can scale and adapt. And this combination is especially important when working with diverse clinical data sources, such as integration of RCTs and RWD. So when we talk about integration and combining statistics and AI ML, we need a clear causal roadmap. When we talk about integrating RCTs and RWD and combining statistics and AI ML. So we begin with a causal question. So estimate, then define assumptions, link them to statistical parameters, and then finally estimate them with the right tool. And statistics help us clarify goals, identify and correct biases, and articulate assumptions. And AI ML helps us model complex patterns and high dimension relationships. So together we can achieve key objectives of integrating different data sources, different informations that cannot be achieved by single data, pure statistics, or AI ML alone. So there are different key objectives of integration of RCT and RWD, which includes the following. So first, to improve the generalizability of RCT findings so they can apply to broader, more diverse patient populations. And the second, to increase the efficiency and the power of estimation by leveraging external controls or external data sources. Third, to enable long-term safety and effectiveness monitoring, something that RCT alone usually cannot achieve, and many others. So in the result talk, I'm going to mention some of the research projects we have done in this space. So in recent years, we have been developing causal inference framework for combining RCT and RWD. Here, I report two lines of research. One is how we're going to leverage representativeness of RWD to improve the generalizability of the RCT findings. And the other one is how we're going to leverage the rich information RWD to improve the RCT analysis efficiency. And here, the integration is very important because we also need to be very cautious because we don't want to borrow biases, right? We only want to borrow strengths from RWD. So in the rest of the talk, I would like to share with you two examples from the second line of research on how RWD and the AI innovations can be used to improve typical RCT analysis and design while maintaining statistical rigor. So we have learned that unlearned AI's digital twin has been used to replace the control arm in the randomization. These are still experimenting. However, unlearned AI's ProCova, this is one method involving digital twin predictions, is well received by the regulator. And the idea is the following. So we know that in the RCT, we have randomization and ensure different treatment groups are comparable, right? So we can compare apples to apples, and then we can directly compare their outcomes to estimate treatment effect consistently. So this is called the internal validity. And we can also invoke ANCOVA model, for example, to do covariance adjustment and to boost the efficiency in trial analysis. And we don't rely on the ANCOVA model to be correct. So this is called a model robustness. Now, how are we gonna leverage the digital twins? The slide does not work. So for example, we can use the digital twin predictions as covariance adjustment. And this becomes the COVA model from the unlearned AI. And because we still maintain the randomization of the treatment, and therefore this approach can provide any biases from the digital twin predictions. So even the digital twin predictions can be biased, we still can get consistent estimator for the average treatment effect. And therefore, this approach is positively reviewed by regulators, including EMA and FDA. So this leverages the typical trial design and the AI-powered predictions. And the full submission is actually very risky. So we don't want to replace the whole control arm by the digital twins because you don't have any benchmark to assess whether there's bias or not. So full substitution is risky because we lack a benchmark to compare whether digital twins or real controls are similar to the RCT controls. And the hybrid control designs could be more effective involving part of the RCT controls. And this approach combines randomization from the RCT with additional controls from digital twins or real-world data. It helps evaluate potential biases in AI-driven controls or real-world controls and facilitate information borrowing. And then the question is how we're going to borrow comparable external controls and downweight on the incomparable controls. Typically, people use Bayesian methods because these are dominating approaches. So if there are inconsistency between external control and the real RCT controls, Bayesian method try to downweight the use of external controls. And this can be achieved by different engineer of priors. So for example, power priors, commensurate priors, so on and so forth. But the limitation associated with the Bayesian methods is that it does not provide a very clear statistical operating characteristic, so they may not control type 1 error very well. So that motivated us to develop frequentist methods that include bias-aware borrowing approaches. So along the years, we have been developing test and pool confounding or bias function modeling, semi-parametric efficient estimator with a selective borrowing, randomization-based inference with conformal selective borrowing. I probably do not have time to go through all the details, so let me directly jump into the summary slides of the methods. So let me directly jump into the summary slides here about the bias-aware borrowing approaches. So here is the statistical toolkit we have been developing, which recognize the benefit of RCT and RWD, as well as the strengths of statistical thinking and AI/ML. So we employed methods like pre-testing, bias function modeling, or selective borrowing to reduce potential biases from borrowing. And our test statistic or estimators are designed to be doubly robust, so we can leverage AI and ML predictive power so that we can estimate some nonlinear relationship well, while still we can maintain consistent and clear statistical properties for our tests and estimators. So I apologize for not having time to detail everything here, but if you are interested in more information, I will provide some references at the end. And looking forward, there are many challenges, which also means opportunities. One of the most pressing concern in using real-world data is privacy. So federated learning provides a way forward by allowing institutions to collaborate without sharing raw data. And this helps preserve confidentiality while still enabling larger-scale analysis. And another opportunity lies in uncertainty quantification. Conformal inference, for example, can provide confidence intervals for individual to make fact, making AI and ML outputs more transparent and trustworthy. And also there are small sample problems. So although AI is often associated with the big data, small samples are common in rare diseases and early phase trials. So how can we adapt AI and ML to this context, which is important so we can still gain reliable insights even with the limited data. And of course, we must acknowledge persistent challenges like ensuring data quality, addressing biases and confounding, and meeting regulatory expectations for transparency and reproducibility. So looking ahead, I see enormous potentials in federated learning, privacy preserving analytics, and also adaptive evidence integration. These approaches can help us move toward more personalized, faster, and safer drug development. And with that, I'm gonna stop. Thank you so much. I'm happy to take any questions. And here are some references.
Question?
Just very general, almost philosophical question. When you showed your table and distinguished between statistics, you always say this. Basically, you limit it to purely parametric statistics. So where would you place in non-parametric statistics? Because I can't really see a big difference between the machine learning causal inference and the non-parametric statistic causal inference that we only know.
So if I understand the question clearly, so you mean for the statistic I highlighted in the table actually is the very traditional statistic. It does not incorporate the very modern statistic techniques, right? Yeah, my presentation focuses on this, but I believe right now the modern statistics are also growing. Yeah, so there's more opportunity like to leverage the advances in statistics and AI ML. And important, I believe, causal inference thinking is quite important that can guide us from like formulating the questions and then articulate the assumptions, right? Because we can identify certain biases or confounding biases from the data, and then whether the assumptions are appropriate or not. And if some certain assumptions are actually cannot be verified based on the data, then we need to do like rigorous sensitivity analysis to see if the conclusion is sensitive to the violation of causal assumptions or not. But these causal assumptions are transparent, so we can gauge whether those assumptions are stringent or not for certain data application. I hope this answers your question.
Any other question? Yeah.
Really nice talk. So I happen to be involved with several RCTs. And to be honest with you, I don't like what I heard about this stuff because number one, saying RCT is not representative is unfortunately misleading because when you start a particular patient, start a particular treatment, they are designed to be representative. So if I don't have medical, if I'm not don't have a particular medical condition, I don't have to be involved in the study at all. So to say that RCT is not representative of real world is really not a good thing because in modern medicine, we have today's modern medicine because RCT. So we have to recognize that importance. Number two, just because you integrate data together, it doesn't mean you achieve the goal. For example, if you put black color and white color together, you can integrate. You will never get the black and never get white. So the RCT is very expensive and take time to implement. And I did those RCTs, I do not want to integrate my data mixed together with some sort of real world data because I will lose my advantage forever. Okay? So I think it's good to discuss some of the ideas, development and integration. But I think we have to communicate clearly to the audience to what we're going to achieve, what's our goal. So far, I think that the RCT is the only study design that contribute unambiguous conclusion about medication, and so that's why we have today's medicine. So I think some things, a lot of people have their own conflict of interest, and the way to communicate with the audience or the integration of all these things, I think it's completely misleading and doesn't necessarily helpful.
Yeah, I completely agree that randomized clinical trial should remain as the gold standard, and there are some RWD components that can like make the RCT more generalizable. So, for example, the programmatic trials. So there are some institutions that has a EHR system, and then they want to make the trials more real world in the sense that they use a EHR to recruit patients so that the patient representation is more representative of the clinical population in a real world case. And therefore, these are like just to use the RWD like to guide the selection. Of course, like this can be say this is the integration of RWD and CT. You may not agree, but RWD has different components that can be incorporated into RCT and make RCT more advanced, I think. And then I agree with you that the randomized clinical trial should remain as the gold standard because of high cost. So we may replace part of that with the real world data. So that's my perspective.
Okay, let's thanks Professor Yang again, and we will take a break. Please come back at 10:40.